Hi, I'm Dennis Phillips, and welcome to Everyday Reloading and Shooting. Right, welcome back to the channel. Once again, we're at the Georgia Gun Club's 100-yard indoor rifle range, and recently I completed a test where I was comparing how the case that you're using affects velocity. And we checked the velocity on 6 different cases, and we found that the LC brass provided the best standard deviation with regards to velocity. And there was a comment that primers also affect velocity, and I happen to have a pretty good collection of primers, so I'm going to run a similar test again today, except this time I'm using 23.2 grains of accurate 2460 powder, which is a very fine ball powder. And I've heard that these ball powders are best ignited using a Magnum primer. So we are testing a number of different primers. I'll give these to you in order. We're using a CCI 400, a CCI 450 Magnum primer, a Federal Gold Medal match primer, MagTech, Federal 205, Gen X, and Winchester 41. But we will check to see which primer gives us the lowest standard deviation on this load. And I understand a different powder and a different bullet may perform differently with either one of these primers, but I'm trying to narrow it down to see which primer is performing the best in terms of standard deviation. And with the LC brass, which also gave us the best standard deviation before, hopefully this will be a pretty good test. Today I'm also shooting my Tikka T3X chambered in 223 Remington with the Oryx SH4 6-24x50 rifle scope. As always, you're welcome to enjoy the music while I fast forward through my shooting, or you can skip forward to the results that follow. Shooting at 100 yards. All right, let's bring them in and take a look and see how we did. All right, as mentioned, I'm mainly checking for velocity here. I wasn't trying to shoot a precision group, but it is interesting to see how these did group. The CCI 400 and the CCI 450 grouped the best. The CCI 400 started off at 2748.9. Then the CCI 450 goes to 2775.3. Federal Gold Medal increases to 2788.2. The MagTech hangs around there the same at 2787.5. The Federal 205 increases to 2806.1. The Gen X primers drop a little bit to 2797.1. And then the Winchester 41 goes to 2841.5. So we will take these home, analyze them. We will get the extreme spread and the standard deviations added to this target, and I'll get back to you with the results here in just a second. All right, so I'm back from the range, and I've had the chance to analyze my targets. We are shooting 55 full metal jacket bullets with accurate 2460 powder, and we're using 23.2 grains, and we should be traveling close to 3,000 feet per second, but we fell short of that by 150 to maybe 250 feet per second. But we'll take a look at each of these. Something I mentioned at the range is that this particular powder is a very fine ball powder, and someone had commented once before that the Magnum primers seem to work better with the ball powders. They do a better job of igniting that. And that seems to be the case here, because the CCI 450 gave us the best standard deviation and the best results here. And we're not looking so much at group size. We are looking at group size to see how the primers performed. But more than that, we're looking for the velocity to see what the standard deviation is and what is the average speed of these bullets. So the CCI 400 had an average velocity of 2,749 feet per second with an extreme spread of 111.3, and it had a standard deviation of 46.9. If you look at the group size here, it's 0.93 inches, so pretty tight right there. Not bad, pretty good results. And that was the highest standard deviation of any round that we had. And so oddly, even though it's the highest standard deviation, it was the best group size of any of the groups that we shot. The CCI 450, you might consider that to be a better group, because even though it was slightly larger at 0.94 inches, we had 4 out of 5 shots that were clustered right here that were 0.49 inches on those best 4 out of 5. It had our best standard deviation. We had an average velocity of 2775, an extreme spread of 45.1, and a standard deviation of 16.6. So by far the best standard deviation, and that's with the Magnum primer and a ball powder. So those two seem to work together pretty well. Moving on to the Federal Gold Medal match, I would have thought that that would have been a better performing primer. It maybe just doesn't like this particular powder and bullet combination, but it did have a pretty decent velocity at 2,788 feet per second, but it had an extreme spread of 89 feet per second and a standard deviation of 37.2. It shot a group size of just under 2 inches at 1.98. Moving on to the MagTech primers, we had a 1.28 inch group, and 2 rounds went through this same hole, which is pretty much dead center on the point of aim. And you could only tell that. I knew I shot 5 shots, and I was looking for the 5th one. And when you flip the target over, you can see that that hole is just slightly larger than the other 3 out here. But I definitely had 5 shots there, and 2 actually went through that same hole. We had a 1.28 inch extreme spread. We're traveling at 2,787 feet per second with an 86.2 extreme spread and a 33.3 standard deviation. When we go to the Federal 205, we've got a 1.21 inch extreme spread. We're traveling at 2,806 feet per second with an extreme spread of 95.1 feet per second and a standard deviation of 33.3. With the Gen X primer, we had a group size of 1.91 inches. We're traveling just under 2,800 feet per second at 2,797 with an extreme spread of 106 feet per second and a standard deviation of 39.3. When we get to the Winchester 41, this is a AR primer. We had a group size of 1.73 inches. We had an average velocity of 2,841 feet per second with an extreme spread of 114.8 and a standard deviation of 39.9. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to rerun this test using these same primers, but with a different powder, maybe CFE 223 or Varget, or maybe both, just to see how these primers perform with a different powder and what sort of velocities we get. Okay, so if there's a significant takeaway here, I would have to say that it's the fact that the CCI 450 Magnum primers work really well with this ball powder, at this particular bullet weight at the 55 grain, and probably would work well with the 52 grain or the 55 or 60 grain VMAX as well. So anyway, these are my results. I hope you find this information interesting or helpful. If you have any ideas, thoughts, questions, please leave those in the comments section below. I hope you'll also like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.